All right, let's talk about tariffs. And I don't mean as some, dusty economic policy you read about in a textbook. We're talking about a major flashpoint in a huge political debate. For a long time, we all thought we knew where everyone stood on this. But lately, things have gotten really surprising.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at this super weird shift in thinking that's got everybody talking. Then we'll do a quick history of tariffs, dive right into the great debate itself, and then get to the part you probably care about most, how it affects your wallet. And we'll finish up by asking, what's the end game here?
Okay, first up, the super weird shift. The whole reason we're even talking about this is because there's been this massive change in thinking, especially in conservative economics, which for literally generations was all about free trade.
Just listen to this quote from James Pethokoukis. He's been watching this stuff for a long time. He says that for supply-siders, the economists who've always been about low taxes and free markets, for them to suddenly get on board with tariffs as a good thing, well, he calls it quite the thing. And trust me, he's being polite. It just shows you what a huge ideological earthquake this really is.
So that's the bottom line. You have a major political and economic movement that seems to be completely reversing one of its core beliefs. It's kind of like your favorite vegetarian restaurant suddenly putting a giant steak on the menu. So the big question we're going to try to answer is, why? What is going on here?
So, let's move on and get a little context. Because to really understand why tariffs are such a hot-button issue right now, we kind of need to know what they are and how they've been used throughout American history.
First, the absolute basics. A tariff? It's just a tax on stuff coming in from other countries. Simple. The idea is it makes foreign products more expensive, which, in theory, makes the stuff we produce here at home look more attractive. Easy enough, right? But here's the thing. The reason for that tax has changed a lot over the years. If you look back, U.S. tariff policy has really had three big phases. In the beginning, they were basically just to pay the government's bills. Then, for a long time, they were used like a shield to protect our young American industries from foreign competition. And then for the last 90 years or so, the whole goal has been to do the opposite, to lower tariffs everywhere through big international agreements. The real question now is, are we stepping into a totally new fourth era?
Which brings us right to today, and to Section 3, the Great Tariff Debate. This is where we're going to lay out the two competing ideas about America's place in the world economy. We'll look at both sides of the coin.
So what are people arguing about? Well, on one side, you've got folks saying tariffs are about creating fair trade, not just free trade. They want to force other countries to play by the same rules, protect our key industries, and even use tariffs as a tool for national security. But on the other side, the argument is that tariffs are really just a tax on Americans, plain and simple. They raise prices for all of us, they hurt our own companies that need to import parts, and they pretty much guarantee that other countries will slap tariffs right back on our exports.
And this quote from a Reddit user, it just nails the feeling of the pro-tariff argument. The whole focus has shifted from this ideal of free trade to this goal of fair trade. It's a really powerful idea emotionally, because it suggests that the way things are now is somehow rigged against us.
And here's a perfect example of what they mean by unfair. The US puts a 2% tariff on cars from the EU, but when we send our cars over there, the EU hits them with a 12% tariff. Tariff supporters look at that and say, see, this is exactly the kind of imbalance we need to fix.
Now, the counter-argument, which former Senator Pat Toomey lays out here, is that classic free market idea. It basically says the whole point of trade policy should be to help the American consumer. Low tariffs mean more competition, which means more choices for you, and lower prices for you, which, at the end of the day, means a higher standard of living for everybody.
But, and this is super important, this isn't just a simple partisan thing. A lot of folks on the left aren't totally against tariffs either. They see them as a tool you can use, but one that needs to be used like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. So the debate is often less about if we should use tariffs and more about how and why. Big, broad tariffs on everything are way different from, say, a strategic tariff on something specific, like semiconductors.
All right, so let's shift gears from the big debate to the real-world impact. Section 4, your wallet, your world. What does all this policy talk actually mean for you, for your family, and for businesses just trying to get by?
Let's start with a number that's going to get your attention. According to the Yale Budget Lab, recent and proposed tariffs could mean an average income loss of $2,700 per household. And that's not some abstract economic idea. That's a direct hit to the family budget.
So where would that hit come from? Well, it's the everyday stuff. Estimates show clothing prices could jump by a wild 37%, electronics by 17%, and cars by more than 12%. We're not talking about luxury goods here. These are things people buy all the time, and you'd feel those price hikes immediately.
Now, this is a really, really crucial point. You'll hear economists call tariffs a regressive tax. It's a fancy term, but it's a simple idea. They don't affect everyone equally. Since lower-income families spend a much bigger chunk of their money on basic things like clothes and food, any price hikes from tariffs just hit them way, way harder.
And you can really see that unequal impact when you break it down by income. For the lowest-earning families, these costs could eat up almost 4% of their take-home pay. For the highest earners, it's just over 1%. So yeah, the burden is not shared equally at all. And while we're feeling that at the checkout line, behind the scenes for businesses, it's just pure chaos. See, global supply chains are these incredibly complicated webs that are built on predictability. When tariffs can just pop up overnight, all that predictability just vanishes. Companies are scrambling to rewire everything on the fly, and a single mistake can literally wipe out their profits. It's a constant, high-stakes guessing game just to keep things moving.
And that brings us to our last section, and maybe the most important one. What's the ultimate goal here? This is where we need to step back and look at the fundamental choice at the very heart of this whole debate.
At the end of the day, it really all comes down to this single question. Do you see a tariff as a tool, something you use to create fairness and build up national strength? Or do you see it as a self-inflicted wound, a weapon that mostly just hurts your own people and your own businesses?
So, we'll leave you with this to think about. What should be the #1 goal of our trade policy? Should it be pure economic efficiency, getting the most stuff for the cheapest price? Or should it be more of a balancing act, where you weigh that efficiency against other big priorities, like national security or having a strong industrial base? There's no easy answer here, but it's the question that's going to define American trade for a long time to come.